It is my pleasure this morning to introduce the last of our 4 INT lectures for this year. And this morning we will have Jeff Hoffman, Dr. Jeff Hoffman, presenting his lecture titled Facing Your Fears, Real and Imagined. And this is part of our first year experience program. Dr. Hoffman is an associate professor of physical education, and he is the chair of that department. He joined the college faculty in 2006. He has an MA and a PhD from Springfield College in Massachusetts, and he has a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. He and his family, including his wife, Teresa, and his children Ben, Jalen, and Connor, live in Grand Island. Please join me this morning in welcoming Dr. Jeff Hoffman to the podium.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. You hear me back there? I got a little mic, but I'll try to use my gym voice too, so to speak. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for introducing me today. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone coming here this morning. I see a lot of colleagues out here, and that's nice to kind of have that support behind you. And also, I see a lot of familiar faces, students that have been in my class and or I've seen around the office or the campus, and also obviously see a lot of unfamiliar faces that hopefully you get to know down the road a little bit. I want to start off today, and hopefully I don't want to bore you by talking a whole lot about myself, but I think it might be beneficial as I talk about this topic that we have today in fear. If you know a little bit about my background, as Dr. Johnson mentioned, I have my master's and my PhD in the area of sports psychology. And I've been, with that degree, I've been given a great opportunity to be able to work with a lot of athletes over the past probably 15 years. From youth level, high school level, college level, and even when I was out east, I had the opportunity to meet with a few semi-professional athletes as well. One of the goals when I work with athletes and when I work with my students as well is to, I'm trying to help the athletes be able to reach their full potential in whatever they're doing on the field of play or in the classroom. And one thing that I try to get them to be, and I'm not sure where I picked this term up, I know for sure it's not in the definition, or it's not in the dictionary, but try to get athletes to become possibilitarians, okay? That, you know, what their mind can conceive, their body can achieve. And a couple different areas I try to work on with, first of all, I'll work with a lot of athletes and a lot of students that have the ability, okay? They have, they're successful athletes, they're just looking for another advantage, okay? On the athletic level, working out, training, everyone's at a similar level. Getting that mental edge is something that I try to help athletes to achieve. But more so is athletes that seem to have obstacles in their way, okay? And we try to work through those obstacles to get to what their goals are. And one of those obstacles, okay, and reason I think that I might have been asked to come today is fear, okay? We like to call it in our area performance anxiety, all right? So as again, I see a lot of athletes that I know. I see a lot of athletes that have Hastings College representing their team. But I also see a lot of students out here that I'm not familiar with, and students that may not have that athletic background. Okay, and I'm hoping that you don't get up and walk, think, oh great, this is going to be, the whole thing's going to be about sports and about athletes and about, you know, how is this going to apply to me? I just ask you to hold tight, don't get up and walk out, don't mentally check out on me quite yet, because one of the areas I also have an opportunity to, with my degree, and the reason why I'm here at Hastings College is I've had the opportunity to be able to teach in the classroom. And I do see a few students that have taken my class, front and center over here, very good, or not center, but front at least, and they can attest to this, that throughout the class, I emphasize over and over and over. It's one of those things I'm sure that they get tired of hearing. But every new topic that I introduce, I really emphasize that the things that I talk about in that class, and also the topic we're talking about today, can be applied to all areas in your life. Okay, one of the topics we talk about is confidence. Okay, who in here couldn't use confidence when they're go to a job for the first time, okay, or confidence approaching someone to ask them out on a date, or whatever may be. Motivation we talk about. What areas of life couldn't you use motivation, okay, to try to motivate you to continue to exercise, all right, motivate you to get your work done, okay, in class, hint, hint, right? Yeah, the weather makes it a little bit easier. Hopefully you don't have spring fever with this weather. Another area then is obviously fear and anxiety, okay, that we can apply, that I apply with my athletes, okay, when they're put in stressful situations, but also fear when you go to that first job interview, okay, or fear here when, the next 4 weeks, the semesters, I was telling Dr. Johnson, it's crazy, 4 weeks we have left. So I would assume that we got some projects coming up here, not to plant any unneeded fear or anxiety on you, but applying, making sure that we get our work done in those areas as well. Okay, so what I've learned from fear then, I've learned, and what I'm going to touch on a little bit today, I've learned from the time that I've worked with my athletes, but also the time that I've worked with my students that have been that are in the classroom. Basically, what I want to do today is I want to touch on 2 points of fear, and then I want to leave you with hopefully some practical ideas that you can then take from this lecture today and apply to your own life. The first area that I would like to touch on is that the notion of someone being fearless. Okay, you've seen the t-shirts before, maybe I'm dating myself. Maybe they don't have the no fear t-shirts anymore. That's a fear of mine, dating myself in the classroom. But the no fear in, the notion that someone, maybe you've heard, wow, so-and-so, they're not scared of anything. All right, they're fearless. You hear that a lot in athletics. Give them the ball, or, let them shine at a time because they're fearless. Okay, and I'm here in this section here to let you know that there's no such thing, in my mind. There's no such thing as being fearless. Okay, we all have fears. If you look at this young lady here, okay, I see a lot of fear in that picture. Not necessarily in here, but in myself if I was in her spot. Okay? Now, do you think as you look at her, do you think she has any fear? She's actually, I think, has a smile on her face. I doubt it. It depends on whether she's a novice climber or whether she's been climbing for years and years and years. But more than likely, whatever it is, she's got some fear going on. And I'll talk a little bit in a second that we need that fear. Okay? Someone came over and said, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "Yeah, a little." "Oh, don't be nervous." And my thing, if you're not nervous and you don't have a little fear to get you going, then you're dead. Okay? Obviously, we don't want that. So whether you admit it or not, whether I'm not scared of anything. Okay? I would challenge you at some point that, we do have fears. We've had fears in the past. We may have some fears going on right now, and certainly there will be fears on some level down the road in the future. Okay? It's been my experience with working with individuals, athletes and non-athletes, that the faster we're able to grasp that, okay, and understand and realize that, fear is not a bad thing, okay, and not only is fear not a bad thing, but it actually, when I know that others, that I'm normal, this is a normal thing, these fears that I feel, the individuals I've worked with have been more motivated and more ready to face those fears head on. So, again, like I mentioned, if you're fearful that the semester's come to the end and, oh my goodness, due dates are coming up, deadlines are coming up here, probably as you look around here and you talk to your friends, you have others that are experiencing the same type of fears. Okay? Who in here are freshmen? Lots. Okay? So in August, all right, you probably had a little bit of a fear of the unknown, right? Maybe some of you had siblings or you knew of others that had the call. You knew a little bit what to expect. But a lot of us came into, being independent now, coming to a place where, you know something about, but not sure what it's like. You probably were a little bit nervous and a little bit fearful of what it's like to be a college student, okay? You just saw how many hands just raised their hands. You weren't the only one feeling that way, okay? We had a lot of, a lot of hands. Do we have any seniors in here? Okay? 3 of you can look at each other, and I would probably, Scott, we've talked a little bit, the fear of the unknown, and your fear is a little bit different. Your unknown, what the heck am I going to do here after a few months? So you have a whole different type of fears. Fear of rejection, we'll talk a little bit. When we're on a college campus here, when you apply for a new job, it's a little scary putting yourself out there with fears that, there might be a chance that I might get rejected. Or, gosh, I don't know if I want to approach that cute girl or that cute guy because I certainly don't want to be rejected. My son thinks my oldest son is 17. He thinks, I was kind of talking through this stuff with him, and he said, this is what you need to do. He said, you need to just go up there when you talk about fear of rejection and point yourself, and then ask them, say, what has 2 thumbs and gets rejected more than an envelope with no stamp? This guy. Real funny. Real funny. I didn't know the this guy thing, so he kind of hit me out of the blue there. So anyways, when we think about fears, virtually anything we think about, there's fear involved. Phobias, extreme fear of something. There's over 100 different phobias that you can find. One is astrophobia. I don't know about you, but I was a little fearful of thunder and lightning when I was little. Not anymore, but when I was little. We had a lot of that going on. Mr. Netterman's not here today. He said he wasn't unable to make it, but I'm sure that as new incoming freshmen go on, he hopes and prays that none of you have bibliophobia. What's that? I think some of my students might have that fear. Fear of books. Okay? And my favorite one is phobophobia. Fear of phobias. Jeez. If you had phobophobia, then I guess you're really in trouble. But so anyways, with all these different things, like I said, fear can come from all different directions, at all different levels. Basically, you can, and these are maybe some terms that you've seen this before, maybe in your psychology class and or whatever. But we can generalize or categorize our fears into 6 different categories, and there's, depending on the source, there's different types of categories. But I just want to talk about a few specific fears and how they apply to a college student, and then in a bit here, how we can face those fears. Okay? The first one is fear of failure. Okay? No one wants to fail. As a college student, you are continually being evaluated. All right? You're being evaluated in the classroom. Okay, by, hopefully, everyone in here has never had experienced the fear of failure, getting an exam back or a test back or a class at the end of the semester, I'm sure. But maybe others out there are. We have that fear going on. When we're participating in extracurricular activities like athletics, like music, like all the different things that we have to offer here, we're being evaluated. Some have to try out for a team, that fear of rejection, and we don't want someone to say, you didn't do it, you failed, okay? I've had, unfortunately, through my, I've, been here like Dr. Time flies by, but I think this is my 7th year at Hastings, and then I've taught either full-time at another institution or adjunct for about 12 or 13 years, and I've had a handful of times where I've had to, tell an athlete or give a student, that F grade, and not one time during those instances has a student ever come and given me a hug or said, "Oh, thank you for that F." Okay, we don't want to, we want to avoid failure as much as possible. Okay, the reason why it's so important if you have a debilitating fear of failure, the reason why it's so important to face that fear and do something about it is when we have that overwhelming fear, it limits our motivation to be able to try new things, okay? Or if you have failed in something, it limits our continuing to do that activity. So the faster we can get over that fear, the more we can expand our horizons. Okay. The second one I already alluded to, but fear of rejection. Knowing someone that's going to evaluate you. And both fear of rejection and fear of failure has to do with our self-esteem, okay? Someone saying that you failed, someone rejecting you, that's a hit at your self-esteem, okay? That's a blow at your self-esteem. Okay, so it's important and again, as freshmen, when you came on, it was probably a little bit scary to approach new friends, to talk to new people, because you didn't want to be you didn't want to be rejected. Okay, and it's important to face this fear, because if we're very fearful of rejection, where it debilitates us, it limits the opportunities that we reach out to new people and to seek out new social networks. And all the research that's been done indicates that the larger your social network, it's all about who you know. It's not all about who you know, but who you know is a pretty big thing. Okay, so when we have a fear of rejection, it limits our opportunities, our feelings of wanting to reach out and build that social network. Okay. Thirdly, the fear of unknown, and again, I touched on the fear of unknown a little bit, not knowing what it was going to be like to be a student, not knowing what we're going to do in a job. There is some comfort and some security in the known, okay? When we know, it's so funny, and a lot of my colleagues in here probably attest to this, if you don't have assigned seating by about week 2, if some student comes to class and someone's sitting in their seat, rut-row, we got problems here. What do you know? Where do I sit? It's like we don't know what to do. Hey, some other areas that, if you've unfortunately had the experience of knowing someone that's been in an abusive situation, okay, an abusive relationship, from the outside you always wonder, why doesn't they just leave? Why don't they just leave? And a big reason why that is that person has a fear of unknown. What is it like to not be with that person? Okay, it goes with your career choice, maybe even your majors. Okay, gosh, I'm not sure if this is really what I want to do with my life. Okay, I don't know if I want to continue working in this job for 20 years or however many years. Okay, but they stick it out and they go to their jobs that they're miserable in because that's a security for them. It's a thing that they know that they have to do, and the fear of the unknown, of not knowing what they're going to do, if they don't do this, is too strong for them to move on. Okay, so that's definitely a fear that we try to avoid. Okay, the fear of death. The fear of death can be broken down, or I like to break it down to in a couple different fears. There's a rational fear, and then there's an irrational fear that we have. Okay, rationally, a fear of death is a good thing. Okay, there is a clear and present danger that we need to either fight or flight, the stress response. When you're driving down the highway and a car decides to veer off into your lane for whatever reason, okay, there is a clear danger in that. And our body does some physiological things. Our heart rate speeds up. Okay, our blood, we're breathing quick so we can get the oxygen to our working muscles. Inside we're dumping, we're dumping fat and sugar to energize our muscles. It's a pure, we go through a whole fight or flight response. That is a good thing. That is, that's how we're made. Okay? Irrationally, fear of death or fear of near-death experiences. Irrationally, typically the dangers are fabricated. Okay? They're either fabricated or they're overemphasized, or they're a couple different phobias. While we're talking about phobias, is the fear of I always can't remember this one. The fear of heights is acrophobia. Okay, so being fearful of falling to our death, so we won't go anywhere high. Okay, hydrophobia, being fear of the water or being scared of drowning, and then claustrophobia, being scared of being in enclosed areas. Okay, does anyone in here have claustrophobia? Anyone scared of being in closed spaces? Okay, at least one person. I just want to kind of give you a picture of an irrational fear and claustrophobia. Okay, I turned 40 years old in December, and I had no idea that I was claustrophobic until about a month ago. I had no idea. I'd heard about, I'd read about, people had told me about anxiety attacks or panic attacks. Had no idea. I'd never felt it before until about 4 months ago. 4 months ago, I've had this neck issue that I've been hurting for probably about the last 7 or 8 years, and I just put it off. Finally, I got an MRI. Has anyone ever had an MRI? You know where I'm going with this then. About a month, and I went into it not ever having any experiences with this, so hey, they even propped my leg up, okay, I've had 2 other MRIs, but not like the one I had a month ago. Okay, I had one on my shoulder where I was outside, I had one on my ankle where I was shoved in. That's the one that I faced about a month ago, okay, and as you can see, if you don't really know what this is, this whole thing is an MRI machine. I don't know what the technical term is, but yeah, this little platform here, and if you don't know what that is someone's feet. Okay, so they laid me down. This little bed here slides in and out, and so they laid me down. They even propped my pillows up, and on my knees up on a pillow, and I was nice and cozy. And then they said, you're going to take about 20 minutes, and I'm thinking, oh, sweet, 20 nice little power nap, go in, go out. If you can see the size of that opening, okay, when I went in, I never really got a good, never thought about it, never got a good look at the opening. Okay, so I lay back, okay, 20 minutes, I'm okay, you ready? Yeah. So they shoved me back there, and I got my eyes closed. Here's my power nap, and I made the mistake. What did I do? God, I opened my eyes. Whoa, right there. Instantly I started thinking death. I am going to die. I'm thinking I'm being buried alive. Okay, was I being buried alive? Absolutely not. Was I going to die? Absolutely not. But you try telling my mind that at that point. And all the signs that you go in your textbook and look at panic attacks, I suffered almost every one. My breathing was going crazy. And they tell you, don't move. And I'm thinking, this isn't even going to work anyway. I'm breathing so heavy, and I'm thinking 15 minutes, 20 minutes in this thing, I'm going to have a heart attack. My heart felt like it was beating out of its chest. My hands were sweaty. And I'm not going to lie, right now, even more irrational is right now my heart's beating a little bit faster than just thinking remembering about how it felt. Every ounce in me wanted to scream like a little baby. Get me out of here! Get me out of here! Okay? But to be continued. Okay? That show that you're really into and then to be continued. I'll get back to what happened to me, okay, in a little bit in a second. Okay, but I had a fear of death, and I've never had that experience in my life. And what made it even worse was that I had never experienced a panic attack before. Okay, so that was one thing that was in my mind. It was irrational. I knew I wasn't going to die, but the real fear and the imagined fear were eliciting the same response. Okay, the last couple basic fears here that I think might be relevant to a freshman would be, first of all, the fear of isolation. Okay, the fear of being alone. Again, come back to, when you first got on campus, you probably knew a person or two, all right? But, as you start seeing in classes and everyone's talking to each other in different situations, and maybe some of you were hadn't met anyone yet, that's a pretty scary feeling that, wow, am I ever going to meet anyone? Am I going to meet anyone in my classes? When you're in a relationship, okay, and that other person breaks up with you. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to have another boyfriend or another girlfriend. I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. Okay, older adults, as we get older, we have the fear of loved ones leaving us. This certainly is an isolation because I have 2 younger ones, but man, do I feel a little bit older, and I'm a little bit nervous about my oldest son. He's going to be a senior next year, and it's becoming more real that he might be in one of your seats here in a couple years. And then I start thinking, wow, I got 2 more here. That's my youngest is 7. Hopefully, God willing, my wife and I will grow to be old, so we'll have each other. But there's always, some of us have that fear of being alone. That's certainly, and it's also one of those it's probably the first fear that we have in life. Okay, when we're a baby, our parents take care of us. They do all the things that need to be done. And then when they leave, we get what you all probably have heard, the separation anxiety. Okay, that fear of isolation, of being alone. So it's certainly a real feeling. And the last one I want to talk about today is just fear of disappointment. Okay, we can talk about fear of disappointment, about you yourself being disappointed. All right, trying to make the team, trying to get into a class, trying to get a job. There's always that time where you may be disappointed. All right, or maybe you're really hopefully everyone's really serious about their academics, and you didn't quite study enough and you got your test back and it was lower than you like and you're disappointed in yourself. Okay, those are all natural feelings, but there's some that are debilitated by those fears of disappointing yourselves, and then there's also the fear of disappointing others. You know, you don't want to, you might avoid a situation because you don't want to, disappoint your parents, or disappoint your friends, or disappoint your instructors, whatever it may be. Okay? So all these different things then, again, leads, kind of confirms what I mentioned early on that first point, that fear, okay, there's no such thing as being fearless. All right? And hopefully in a little bit here I'll be able to at least give you a few ideas of how we can face that fear. All right? The second point I want to make then today, and I've kind of alluded to it a little bit already, is the importance of differentiating between fears that are real and fears that are imagined. Okay? Fears that are rational, fears that are irrational, fears that are useful, and fears that are useless. Okay? And much of while there certainly is real fears, all right, again, those saving your life type fears that we need to react, most of our fears, okay, are unrealistic, imagined fears that we catastrophize about. I'm not saying they're any less significant or they're any less than those real fears, okay, but the good thing about it is that you have control of it. If you made them up in your mind, then you can also deal with them in your mind. It was funny at my 11-year-old daughter, we were talking about this, and I don't mind getting to this. When I was in your seats umpteen years ago, getting up in front of a group like this, fear of public speaking, I don't know. Now, I'm certainly not a professional speaker by any means, but I feel a little bit comfortable. But I was a little nervous. My peers were going to be here, and students I didn't know were going to be here. And there's a little bit of fear of the unknown, all that stuff. And my daughter, Daddy's little girl, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're just imagining. And she hadn't even read what I went through, what I talked, You've done this a million times. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm talking to my shrink or something. She's like totally making me feel better. So fabrications in your mind. Some of the things I wrote down, when you hear sounds outside. Well, what was that? And the whole rest of the night, you're freaked out, and it was just a branch that hit the window. Public speaking, roller coasters. I told you I turned 40. My wife took me to Vegas, the first time either one of us had been to Vegas, and since we've been married, I don't think she's really afraid of heights, but you'll never get me on a roller coaster. Anyone like roller coasters? Anyone hate roller coasters? All right, so a little more lovers than haters. But I said, that's my bucket list. One on my bucket list. She is going to go on a roller coaster with me. Nope. No way. There's no way. You're going to have to find someone else to go on a roller coaster with you. And we went to New York, and they have that little roller coaster, and by golly, I got her on the roller coaster, and we got done, and she's squealing and yelling and screaming halfway through it, and we get done, and what does she do? Can we do it again? Let's go. Okay, so imagine, it wasn't something, the roller coaster was not suddenly going to go flying off into, MGM or whatever. So and I see Dr. Babcock over here. I shot the gun a little bit. I forgot I had this slide on here. I was going to talk to you. Anyone fearful of snakes? Okay? Anyone right now is kind of, your heart rate gets going just seeing that picture? Depends on the snake. Yeah. If it's the one that it's not going to bite you, maybe not. Now, if I had outside the door, if I had a little container that has my pet python, anyone want to come up here and handle it? Come on, let me go get. I don't have a pet python because I'm kind of scared of snakes. I would never own a python, but anyway, things like this again. You can those that really hate snakes have a fear of snakes. Your heart rate gets going. You get some of those physiological things going, and it's not even that snake is not going to come out of that screen at you. But in your mind, don't tell your mind that. So, but back to Dr. Babcock here. One of a famous quotes, historical quotes, a historical figure, is this quote on fear from Franklin D. Roosevelt in his 1933 inaugural address. And maybe you kind of can hear it. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And it really hits on what I'm talking about, but I'd heard this long time ago, but I'd never heard the other half of this statement, which I think is even more powerful and kind of, I don't know if he wrote it or if his writer wrote it, but the other half of it is nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Okay? So basically what he's saying there is that, fear affects individuals. Fear affects you and I as much as we let fear affect us. Okay? The unjustified things, the unreasoned, the nameless, things we can't even see or name that we just kind of make up. Again, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying, well, you scaredy cat, you shouldn't be scared of that. You should be, okay? But the good thing about that, again, that I want to point out, and kind of the take home of this is, if it's in your mind, you have control, and there's ways that you can overcome those fears that debilitate you in those fearful situations, whatever they may be, however embarrassing you think it is, or however real you think it is. The things that we have control of, and again, my sports psychology students can attest how many times I say control in that class, about a zillion times. Okay? Things we should be paying attention to, the things that we have control of. Okay? So those fear is fearless to me is not a real term. Okay? Everyone's fearful of something, and when we deal with those fears, it's important to understand what is real and what is imagined, and focus on the things that are imagined. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about then today is try to give you some practical ideas, and again, some ideas that I've worked with athletes when maybe they've been in a slump, maybe they've been fearful of performing, on the courts or on the fields. So hopefully some things you can take away, and the way I want to talk about those things, those few things, is to come back to my to-be continued story. I think if you remember, I left off about like I was almost ready to cry like a little baby. Get me out of here, get me out of here. Okay, and if my fingers can go as close as they can without actually touching, that's how close I was to just get me out of here. But I did not want to go out like that. Okay, so let me just kind of take us to into those few moments there. Okay? The first thing that was going on in my mind, okay, is I'm going to die. Inside my head, I'm going to die. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to get out. I started thinking about being in a box and being buried alive. Just all kinds of things that I'd never thought about being scared of that, or when I see it on a movie or something like that, ooh, that would kind of not be a real fun way to die. But I never obsessed about it or had a panic attack about it. In this case. I had a lot of what I call in class a lot of stinking thinking going on. I had a lot of really bad, negative thoughts. Okay, so what I did is somehow it came to me. I reflected back. Okay, what do I teach? What do I teach in my class and to my athletes? Okay, when you have a lot of stinking thinking going on, one of the first things I teach is you have to recognize, okay, that you have bad thoughts going on. A lot of times we have a lot of, the cup is always half empty for us, and we don't even realize that that's what our thinking is. And so we have to identify it first of all. The second thing that I did is one tool that I use with athletes is when they have bad thoughts, I have them think of a trigger word or a trigger image. Okay? And the image I use a lot, or athletes use a lot, is a big red stop sign. So in my mind, that stop sign just came out of nowhere. Stop. Okay, you're not doing yourself any good here. You're not getting out of this thing. You're not going out like that. You're going to finish this thing. Stop those thoughts. Okay? So then once I did that, I started to do a little bit of countering. It's called countering. I started to try to change some of those negative. I'm not going to die. Okay? If I die, it's going to be some freak accident that has nothing to do about being in an MRI machine. Okay? So stop. So I did some cognitive restructuring. I changed the way that I thought about things, okay? And the last thing not the last thing, but then I told myself, because my heart rate was going crazy, my breathing was uncontrollable, I said, in my mind, take a deep breath, okay? Whenever you're mad, sometimes it makes you mad when you're really mad and they say, Jay, take a deep breath, Sometimes that's not a good thing, but it's that's the easiest thing we can do when we're stressed is to take a controlled, deep, centered breath. Okay? We are a society that's on the go, 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 go all the time. We've evolved forever to be like that. And so we are usually taking shallow, short breaths. Okay? Just, gotta get somewhere. And in that case, that's what I was doing. So everyone right now, just kind of do a little, breathe through your nose, let your abdomen expand a little bit, and take a deep breath from your stomach. Go ahead. And let it out. That's almost, when you're stressed, it's almost, you feel that stress relief. Okay, we have muscles in our diaphragm that when they're stretched, it's like a muscle when you're doing a bicep, it contracts. And then when we relax, it relaxes. And it's kind of the natural way then to give yourself a relaxed feeling. And so that's what I tried to do, and it didn't happen right away. I was trying to really focus on my breaths while my mind was telling me positive things. You're going to get through this. You're fine. Just keep taking deep breaths. Okay? Another technique that I talk a lot about in class and work with athletes is mental imagery and positive visualization. And I'd already talked about, what was one thing I've already talked about in this scenario that I use mental imagery with? Very good. The stop sign, visualizing, seeing the stop sign in my mind. So I had already used mental imagery, but I took it a step farther. I found my happy place. Okay? Happy, 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 right? My happy place for that time is I was imagining, all right, your breaths, you're starting to control your breaths. Man, you are on a beach somewhere, and it is nice. And getting away from this was nice, the cold weather. So one thing with mental imagery, and we'll actually next week we'll talk about this, is to make it most useful for you, if you use mental imagery, you need to use all of your senses. So I was visualizing in my little happy place the sun, a full sun, a bright sun, blue skies, the water was crystal blue, the sand was white, and I could smell the sea breeze. I could hear the waves crashing onto the beach. I could hear my kids off playing, building a sand castle. I tried to get myself to that place, and it started to work. Okay? And I don't know why, because I'd done it with athletes forever, but I was like, wow, okay, this is starting to work. All right, geez, I'm practicing what I preach, and it actually works a little bit. I'm feeling, and then all of a sudden, the thought, the reminder of me having this right in my face would come back, and boom, the heartbeat would go, and then I'd have to start deep breaths, and I'd have to start kind of that process all over again. Okay? One thing that I did when I was in there too is I did a form of meditation, and I'm not going to lie, I pray, oh, please God, don't let me die. Please be, so I don't know if that was really just a beg or if it was a true prayer, but, a sense of what you want to do to try to relieve your stress is to meditate, to relax, to clear your mind. If there's a higher power than you, then you go seek that to try to help you get through that time, and that was refreshing. That was refreshing to me. I was able to get through the 20 minutes, and honestly, in those first 45 seconds, I didn't think there was any way. And as I talked to my wife about this situation and talked about how I was going to add this in, first she mentioned, why didn't you just get a sedative? I didn't even know there was one. Really? Now you're telling me this? Thanks. So if I do that again, I'm probably going to go maybe the sedative route, because that was, I don't know if I have to have another MRI if I'll be able to make it again. But anyways, the other thing she said was, it's interesting that if you wouldn't have had this experience, if you wouldn't have talked so much about self-talk and tried to apply it to your, when you're out golfing and when you're doing it for yourself, if you wouldn't have, worked on, known about these things, you probably wouldn't have made it through that MRI. I said, no, I absolutely would not have made it. I would not have made it another second through that MRI. Okay? So, there's other things out there. There's fears that are so debilitating to people that you have to go, there's therapy, and I'm certainly not in a position to talk about those, go into detail about those things, but, you've heard of maybe the, systematic desensitization, that if Dr. Fromgen, if I was able to bring a snake in here, I'd show you a picture. Then when you're comfortable with that, then maybe I'd bring a tank in here, and then maybe you would hold it, okay? But you slowly... No, it wouldn't work? All right. those are hopefully some ideas, again, that you're going to face some type of fears, and you probably could even do it today. And hopefully when you feel where it's debilitating, that those are some really on-site, quick ways that you can use to try to reduce some of those feelings. And what I did, and after I faced it head on, I felt better about myself. Wow, that was a situation I've never had a panic attack. It was really pretty scary. I'm not real certain I'd ever want to experience that again, but I didn't run from it. I didn't get me out of here. So when you have fears, if you run, those fears will come back. Try to face those fears head on and use either these tools or learn some other tools that will help you get through that so that you can find your happy place. All right? I'd be happy to entertain any questions, any specific questions that you might have about the topic or something else. Thank you very much for being here today.